What everyday frustration led you to build Ember?
I remember kind of looking around my kitchen and thinking all of the different things that could benefit from temperature control. And that was kind of the origin story.
Clay Alexander is an American inventor and serial entrepreneur with over 250 patents. He's the founder and chairman of Ember, the innovative brand behind the Ember mug, baby bottle, and cube. Each named a time-best invention.
How did your career start?
I was 22 years old. I started Radiance. I have no outside capital in that company. I literally learned cash flow from scratch.
Who inspired you as a builder, like early on?
Inventors aren't famous or like celebrated. They end up like selling off one of their inventions or they license it. But if you can figure out how to invent something and then also commercialize it, that's how you can really win big.
You do a lot of world's first innovative stuff. What are some of your design principles?
The very first Ember mug is this. I don't really care how it looks. What I want is I want to understand what is the experience when I use it.
How does one get into so many stores?
We're in almost every Apple store in the world. Ember was one of the first non-Apple products to have Find My built into it.
Really? What's one piece of advice you'll give to people?
You need to find something that you are wildly passionate about.
So, hey, I had a lot of fun researching you. You're a very interesting person. I just have to start there. But I want to say, I was reading your story and I want to know what everyday frustration led you to build Ember?
Well, it started with scrambled eggs, and I have a little prop over here, if you don't mind. This is the world's first self-warming dinner plate. And basically, I created it because my eggs were getting cold, and I was having a tough time enjoying my meals when my eggs were getting cold on my plate. So I decided to create the world's first self-warming dinner plate. And that's what this is here. And I started eating my meals off of it. Salmon, steak, my eggs, of course. And you get about 30 minutes into the meal, you cut in and steam comes out. It's the perfect temperature, perfect flavor. And I knew that I was really onto something. And so from there, I remember, Manav, kind of looking around my kitchen and thinking, coffee mugs, soup bowls, chafing dishes, all of the different things that could benefit from temperature control. And that was kind of the origin story of Ember.
Yeah. That's brilliant, because and that has such a big market too, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's a lot of people in the world who live in cold temperatures. I also imagine Michelin star restaurants, for example,
Yes.
they really care about the temperature levels of the food they're serving.
Exactly.
So who was the target audience when you started that?
So, well, when I originally came up with the plate, which we ended up launching the mug first, it was those Michelin star restaurants, those chefs that really spend a lot of time making the perfect meal and then, plating it. And then by the time it gets to the table, it's not the right temperature anymore. So,
Yeah.
and you can like Ruth's Chris, they run their plates, I believe like hundreds of degrees. And then you bring the steak out. The problem with that is it's actually continuing to cook the steak. So our invention of the dinner plate, it actually keeps it at a perfect 140 degrees, and it just keeps it warm without continuing to cook the food. But that was the original invention. But we ended up going to market with the Ember mug, right? The world's first self-heating, temperature-controlled coffee mug.
Yeah.
Because at the time, this was back in the early 2010, 2011, and we were watching the coffee market, and it was trending upwards, right? And it was just going up and up and up, and people were spending more and more on a cup of coffee, right? They used to spend 50 cents on a Dunkin' Donuts, just black coffee, and then now people are spending $10 on a latte frappuccino. And so I'm watching this trend, and I'm thinking, that's definitely the best way to introduce temperature control to the masses is through the coffee cup. And so we ended up launching this, the world's first temperature-controlled coffee mug with Starbucks in 2016. And you can see, you can actually tap on the screen there, and you can set the temperature.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you can also add your name in there.
Yeah, that's right. When you turn it on, it says, "Hello, Clay." Yeah.
That was interesting. What other products did you end up making with this heating technology?
Yeah, so we started there, and it was a huge success. We sold out all across the country within 7 days. And Starbucks came back to us and they said, well, what's up your sleeve? What do you have next? So then we brought them the ceramic mug. This, to this day, is still our real high volume mover. And we ended up launching this with Starbucks in 2017. And we sold 110,000 units in the first 6 weeks. So it was a big success right out of the gate. And it really put our brand on the map. You know, when I created Ember, my biggest fear is that I didn't want to create a gadget that would be perceived as a gadget, because that's not going to be a multi-billion-dollar company, right?
No.
That's going to be something that you might see in a sharper image when you're in the mall.
Yeah.
It's not going to be something that you're selling in the millions of units. And so I knew that I needed to partner with a great partner. And Starbucks, being the 1,000-pound gorilla in the coffee space, I was like, okay, we got to partner with Starbucks. And so there's all these stories I have about trying to get into Starbucks. I eventually got an introduction to Howard Schultz, and who's the founder of Starbucks, as you may know, and was the CEO at that time, and helped us kind of get into Starbucks.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So I think I want to give our audience like a little bit context on who you are. And before we get into the juicy stuff of how you got 250 patents and how you invented all these cool products, I do want to start a little bit from the inception of your early 20s.
Yes.
Because a lot of people want to know, like, how did your career start? And because I know your first company, you started it pretty early.
Yeah, I was 22 years old. I started Radiance, which is a lighting design agency. It's now 25 years old, which is fantastic. I call it the American dream. We're one of the top lighting design agencies in the country. I'm very proud of what I built with Radiance because, you know, a lot of people don't realize this about me, but I was raised dirt poor. Like, I was on welfare, food stamps, the whole 9 yards. You know, we were getting the government cheese blocks sent to our house.
Wow.
And so when I started my first company, and I was rubbing nickels together, I didn't have any money. So I figured out how to charge a deposit to a customer before I even did the job, and then use that money to pay for the materials and then execute the job, right? So anyways, I ended up building and building and building it, and I have no outside capital in that company. I literally learned cash flow from scratch, okay, and built Radiance. Now it's 25 years old. I do not operate the business anymore. I have a wonderful woman named Jen Goldstein, who is the CEO of the company. We do all the major lighting design services for Universal Studios, both here in Hollywood as well as in Orlando. We light big attractions all over the world, actually. Yeah. So that was my first business. And then that led to my second business, which was Journée Lighting, which I created the world's first LED track light. And I built that into a brand. I sold that company. That was my first major kind of exit. Sold that to EcoSense. That's in the news. That's public knowledge. And then while I was creating Journée, my second company, I also had invented the world's brightest LED light bulb. And that was a whole kind of journey in and of itself. And when I created it, my big thought behind it was, well, I can market this myself and try to go up against the big dogs in the light bulb space, or I can try to sell it or license it. And I decided at the time, especially just where I was in my career, that the best thing to do would be to license it. And, you know, I've been an inventor since birth, so that would be a big win for me. So I went out to the market with this light bulb invention, and I had patents and stuff. And long story short, I ended up getting GE and Sylvania in a bidding war, and then ended up doing the deal with GE. And what made me really proud about that is that
So they acquired the technology?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, General Electric. Yep. So I sold my light bulb to General Electric. It was via a licensing deal. So they bought the IP rights and the license to the patents and all that good stuff. Yeah. And I was really proud of that because, you know, growing up, I was a big fan of Thomas Edison, and I still am. And, you know, Thomas Edison is the founder of General Electric. General Electric used to be called Edison
I did not
General
know that.
Electric. Yeah, that was the name of the company, Edison General Electric. And there was this fallout between J.P. Morgan and Edison, and they ended up taking Edison's name off the front of the company. So long story short, Edison invents the world's first usable light bulb, and then GE many years later buys my light bulb from me. I was just absolutely amazed by that.
That's a full circle moment right there.
Yes.
Because you
Yes.
were inspired by this person, and then you ended up selling it to GE.
Yeah.
I like the fact that okay, you're also an inventor, but you're also really good at sales.
Yes.
Does
I
that
pride
come
myself
naturally
in
to
that.
you, or?
I would say yes, and it's a gift that I actually didn't know that I had, okay, for many, many years. And what I realized is people would say to me when I was leaving a pitch or something, they would say, Clay, you got the whole room fired up. Like, how did you do that? And I said, what? I did? Like, I literally don't even know that I'm doing it. Like, and part of it is like my advice to anyone that's in sales is like, you know, I wear my heart on my sleeve, right? So my passion when I'm coming into a room, first of all, I don't even really like the word sales because really what you're doing is you're taking a product into a company, corporation, a partnership that they can benefit from.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe even more than you, the one selling it, right?
Yeah.
You can solve a major problem for them and you can make a little bit of money along the way. And so I look at it differently. I look at it as like, wow, I've got this great thing that I'm taking into this meeting that I think this company can really benefit from. And then you just get like naturally kind of fired up. And people buy passion. They buy enthusiasm and they buy passion, right?
That's incredible. I do want to know, like, who inspired you as a builder, like early on? What were your some people you looked up to, some entrepreneurs, some inventors you looked up to?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I definitely studied Thomas Edison. I remember when I was a kid and the James Dyson TV commercials would come on. And this guy with a British accent, and he's got this vacuum, and he's talking about the cyclone that he invented, and it sucks the air in and spins it around and everything. And I thought, wow, because if you think about our society, inventors aren't famous or like celebrated per se, like at scale.
They're
right?
not, usually they're not like monetarily like successful too.
Right, because they end up like selling off one of their inventions or they license it and they get a certain amount of income, which is great. But if you can figure out how to invent something and then also commercialize it, which is what I've done with Ember, that's how you can really win big. And James Dyson, he did that. He invented it and then he commercialized it on a global scale. And so for me, I looked up to folks like James Dyson when I was a kid.
Incredible. I do want to know, why did you name the company Ember? It's a great name, by the way.
Thank you. I wanted 2 syllables. I wanted an English word. I wanted it to be easy to pronounce and easy to spell. I had a lot of requirements when I was naming this company. And Ember kind of fell into my lap in a sense. We were racking our brains. I went through 2 naming agencies. Most people don't realize is you can literally go out and hire an agency.
Wow.
All they specialize in is coming up with company names. So I came up, hired a couple agents. I had walls full of names. Literally, we put them all up on the wall and stuff. And nothing was really kind of like landing. I was sitting there in my house I have in the mountains where I was looking out and it was snowing and I had a fire going and there was like some embers glowing in the bottom of the fire and it was snowing out and I had a cup of coffee and I was sitting on the hearth right there in front and it was so warm and I was just looking out the window. Nowadays I call that an ember moment, by the way, when you're kind of chilling and you're like sipping on your coffee in an ember mug but at the time, obviously, we hadn't come up with that name yet. And I remember I was staring in the fireplace, and these embers are kind of like glowing. They're like get a little brighter, and they come down, and they glow. So I said, Ember. And then I started Googling. Craziest thing. Back in prehistoric times, we used to move fires from site to site by taking the embers out of the actual fire that you had made. Because remember back then, you're spinning sticks and doing stuff and it would take you like hours and hours just to light one.
Yeah.
Well, you would take a horn off of some kind of a bowl or something that are hollow. They would put the embers in the horn. They would put leather over the top and you could go for days with the embers in the horn to the next campsite, put some kindling, dump the embers out, boom, fire comes up.
There was no matchbox or lighters back then.
No. So I love the depth behind the
Yeah.
name Ember, because you're like, and the fact that our mugs keep your coffee at the perfect temperature,
Yeah.
almost like there's an ember in it.
And also, like, I'm a sucker for domains. And when someone has a 5-letter or 6-letter domain, I'm just like, how did you do that? And like .com,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
And he has the Ember 5-letter .com domain. I was like,
Yep.
that was brilliant, getting that domain.
So we originally had, our domain was embertech.com.
Yeah.
And even at launch, and it was bothering me big time. I knew that it was not. I wanted to build a multi-billion-dollar business from the time that I started Ember. I could see the vision, clear as day, where I was going.
Yeah.
And I knew, one thing of many, that having embertech.com wasn't going to get me there.
Nope.
It's not nikeshoes.com, right? It's nike.com.
It's not TeslaCars.com.
Exactly. It's like, so I knew that I had to have it, and I just went on this hunt, and I finally figured out who owns it, because it was kind of like blocked at the time, but you could tell somebody owned it, and it's Silicon Labs up in the Bay Area. And they have a chip, a microchip actually, that's called the Ember chip.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to management there, and I said, and I gave them my vision. I said, I'm going to start a temperature control brand. I'm going to go into infant feeding and medicine.
You made an offer that was hard to refuse.
Yeah, I gave this big pitch about my vision. I said, can I please buy your domain from you? It will mean the world to me. All of them shot me down. Okay, literally like VPs, SVPs. I went to CEO, got shut down.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? And by the way, the thing about me, I never give up. When I'm aiming for something, I'm just gonna go. And that's part of my message to young entrepreneurs. Honestly, you can literally feel like you're hitting a brick wall.
Yeah.
And at least for me, there has always been a way through the brick wall. Always, every time. But you need this crazy amount of like grit and resilience to keep coming back. So I said, okay, who does the CEO report to? Board of directors. So then I start Googling board of directors, Silicon Labs. Find the whole board. Then I start Googling chairman, board of directors. You see where I'm going with this?
Yep.
So finally, I take my big letter, I find this guy's name, I go first dot last at Silicon Labs. First, last,
You just predicted the
first
email.
initial at. I literally put 20 versions in there, okay? Because I knew one of them would get to this guy. I sent my letter, boom. He responds within 24 hours. Loved my story, loved my background. I went for the human angle. It wasn't about the money. It was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they weren't really using it. They were really trying to drive more traffic to Silicon Labs and stuff. So long story short, that's how I got the deal done. I went all the way up to the top.
One theme that I'm noticing with you is you do a lot of world's first stuff.
Yes.
And you do a lot of innovative stuff. What are some of your design principles? And I also notice this theme of like minimalism, like even in the cups, like I see a lot of minimalism in the designs. What's your thesis for that?
So when we are creating a wholly new product, the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that it has a great human experience. So like if you look at this mug, for instance, I can use any of our products, it looks and feels like something familiar to you, right? I didn't try to make the world's first temperature-controlled coffee mug and then also make it look kind of like futuristic or strange or have lights going around the bottom or something. I wanted it to be about the coffee drinking experience, right? Every sip, the aromas coming out, and just being able to kind of cup your mug. I wanted it to be ceramic on the outside. So we have this whole thing where we start with the human experience and then we work backwards from there, right? And we back the design into that. Yeah. So one of the things is, and this will be explain to you how I hired my engineering team. It's like, once we created the design, right, these are the two first products, I said, wait a minute, they can't be too big because the bigger they are, they get heavy, they're hard to hold, people have different sized hands. Okay, well, and then I want it to be mostly liquid. I don't want to have like a football of electronics on the bottom here and then liquid. So okay, well, how can I miniaturize the electronics? Got it. I'm going to hire cell phone engineers. So I went around the early days of Ember poaching electrical engineers from Apple, Microsoft, who was making the Lumia phone at that time, Motorola. Like I was taking cell phone engineers. What are they really good at? Making things razor thin, right? And really, really compact. So this, if you look at it, is ridiculously thin for having enough battery power to keep coffee hot with no lid for an hour and a half.
Wow.
The heat is just radiating out.
Can we show the other product that was the bulky one?
Oh, the original.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I want to see, just for context, so people can see like this.
So this is what you may know today as the Ember mug, right? The very first Ember mug that I had created is this. And I built this in my laboratory way back in probably around 2011. And you had asked me about my philosophy on developing products. The first thing I like to do is to create a working prototype. I don't really care how it looks the first time I make something. What I want is I want to understand what is the experience when I use it. And so this is a remote control airplane battery. You know, this is circuitry that I all kind of cobbled together. These are a bunch of switches that could set the temperature. So I set the temperature at 135 degrees. And there's, you know, it's battery powered, it totally functions. And I would go around town drinking my coffee out of this thing. And, you know, I got a lot of strange looks, you know. But it was amazing. I'll never forget the aha moment. Every kind of inventor or entrepreneur has this aha moment. I was on this conference call. It was actually, I was working on a project with GE actually. And I was on a conference call. And it was a 2-hour-long conference call. And I had this sitting right here. And we would get into it, and I'd come back 15 minutes later, have a sip. Oh, that's the same temperature it was before. Get into it, come back 30 minutes later, have a sip. It's the same exact temperature. Because a thermos, all these other things, they're going to be moving temperature, right? They might be, like a thermos is slower at dropping temperature than something else, but it's always changing its temperature. So your human brain has adjusted to that over time, and when you go to take a third or fourth sip, your brain has already done the math and will calculate the warmth level of your coffee when you go to take your fourth sip. And when you go to take a sip and it's still 135 degrees, there's a syntax error that happens. Your brain goes bing, 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 bing. It's like, whoa. And that happened to me on that phone call. And I said, wow. People are going to really like this. That was the moment for me. And because when you're making hardware, it's millions and millions of dollars. There is no way around it. When you're making a product that has a circuit board and has batteries and has, so you better be really sure that like and a lot of it just comes from gut when you're creating something wholly new.
So you're in 5,000 retail locations in 27 countries. I do want to know, for people like young people like me who are watching, like how does one get into so many stores?
Okay, big journey, multi-year journey.
Big journey.
We started in the United States. We started with Starbucks. We were fortunate to have them as a launch partner. Because of the success of our first product, we launched the second product in 4,600 Starbucks stores. That allowed us to get to a lot of doors real fast. But that was meant to be kind of a launch strategy. We were in that many Starbucks stores for many years. Now we've scaled back with Starbucks to their reserve stores, so they're more high-end stores. But that was how we got out of the gate. From there, you know, myself, our sales crew, we were flying all over the country pitching to Target and Best Buy and Williams-Sonoma and Apple stores. And just constant, we were grinding for several years. The big win from an international perspective was the Apple Store. So we had been pitching to the Apple Store for a couple of years. We were already on the market. We were doing really well. And, you know, they have to test your product.
Wait, you have a partnership with Apple?
Yes, we do. We're in almost every Apple Store in the world.
Really?
Ember, yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
And I did not know that.
Yes.
That's incredible.
The Ember mug was one of the first non-Apple products to have Find My built into it.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
And it has this whole app and everything.
So we
correct?
worked with Apple on the Find My software early on, and we were able to integrate. And you can still buy a Ember mug with Find My.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
And just for context, this is a premium product.
Yes.
This is definitely
$199,
Yeah.
$130. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this one
Yeah.
because I prefer like a lid open.
Yes.
You know, this is more for
aromas.
travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is for travel, but then usually like when you're at home, you're gonna get that one.
Yes. Yes.
So how does the technology work in that case? Like, what's heating the cup?
Yeah, so we use LiPo batteries.
Okay.
To nerd out, they're called 18650s. It's the same cell that's in Tesla cars. Most EVs use these. They're cylindrical cells. They're very energy efficient. They're very safe. They're very energy dense as well. So we start with the battery because you want to have a really good high quality battery. And then we have a lot of circuitry in there. We have multiple temperature sensors. You know, this travel mug has almost a dozen temperature sensors. They run up and down the side. We have a digital temperature sensor in the base. We're all about accuracy. When we launched the Ember mug, I remember all these journalists all around the country were taking a thermometer and putting it in the mug, looking at the Ember app. And if the Ember app said 136, they were like, wow, my thermometer says 136. Like, we were getting all these rave reviews that it's actually dead on accurate to the temperature. So, but that takes a lot of sensors and algorithms. So one of the things that we invented, and we have all the patents on, is this concept of inducing a convection current inside of a liquid vessel.
Yeah.
Why does that matter? If I just put a heater inside of a mug, you will start to get a delta. Heat rises. The liquid at the top will be 20 degrees hotter than the liquid at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's a bad user experience.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yep.
Right.
So we invented this idea of inducing a convection current. Originally, I was inspired by the convection currents in the Gulf Stream and how the ocean literally moves based on pockets of heat and cold energy. It's crazy. It's wild. Because if you look at our...
You got that inspiration from nature.
From the ocean, yes.
Okay, I love
100%.
that. I love that.
From the ocean. I always tell people and inventors too, like, look to nature.
Yeah.
I was banging my head against the wall trying to solve this
Even
what you call a
temperature.
delta of the temperature, right?
Yeah.
Even temperature throughout the liquid. I thought, this is in the early days, Manav, where I thought, if I can't solve this, there is no Ember. No one is going to buy a temperature-controlled mug where there's 20-degree difference of the liquid at the top of the cup and the bottom of the cup.
Nope.
Because like you take a sip, it burns your mouth at the top, you mix it, it all comes down, right?
Yeah.
And so we were racking our brains. We actually, in the early patents, we have a diaphragm, which is like a speaker that vibrates the liquid. We have a kinetic mixer in there. We had all these different things. I knew that none of them would be commercially viable. You would get stuff stuck in there. It would just, and I was just racking my brains. And then something came on and I was looking at the Gulf Stream and it's moving and I thought, what the heck? Why don't we just induce the convection current? So the way we place our heaters and the way we run our algorithms, we force a rise up one wall. And then it falls down the other side.
Wow.
And then boom, you got a loop. And you know what we've done? We've put glitter, microscopic glitter in water, and we made a clear version, and you can literally see the liquid running in a loop.
Wow. You know who we need a
cool?
partnership with? Nespresso. Now, I have an espresso machine at home. Okay, I love Nespresso, but their coffee gets cold so fast.
Very fast.
Like in 10 seconds, and I'm like, oh.
Very fast.
And it ruins the whole experience.
Yes.
Like the first sip is amazing.
Yes.
And then by the time you have your third sip, it's gone.
Yes.
And then you just throw it. You don't want to drink that.
That is the exact problem that we are here to solve. And we actually have made what we call our cappuccino cup. It's a little small little Ember mug, just for the Nespresso.
Nespresso, if you're watching, hit up Clay.
Yes.
we need, I mean, they're partnered with Apple, so Nespresso is easy.
Yes, yes.
Cool. Let's talk about this thing right here.
Yes.
So I want to start Ember has been around for like 15 years.
We launched with Starbucks in 2016. So what are we? That's about
Around 9 years.
years-ish. Yeah.
So I think we talked about the Ember. I want to talk about this thing right here. People must be curious, like what are they looking at? So I want to talk. Can you tell me the inception of Ember LifeSciences and why did you decide to start this new thing all of a sudden?
So we were cranking away at coffee cups. We haven't talked about this, but this is the baby bottle as well, right? The world's first self-warming baby bottle. And so
let's touch on that a little bit. Why would a baby need a warm thing?
So when my daughter was born, she's 13 years old now.
Yeah.
My wife did most of the feedings, but every once in a while when it was Dad's turn, I would go down in the kitchen, bring Charlotte. She was crying, turning red and purple, and my wife would not let me use the microwave to warm up the milk. So I had to use a bowl of hot water. This is how people do it. Yeah. And you warm it up and you put the bottle in there and it's bobbing around and this and that. And it can take forever. Yeah. And in the meantime, your child is losing his or her mind, right? And then you finally get it and you're squirting milk on your wrist, okay? This is the 21st century. And I'm squirting milk on my wrist to go, I think that's the right temperature, right? And so I thought, as an inventor, there's got to be a better way. So why can't the bottle warm itself? And why can't the bottle have sensors in there so that when it gets to exactly body temperature, 98.5, boom, nail it. So that was the origin story. That is how we created the world's first self-warming baby bottle. And this is on the market today.
That's such a delicate product, by the way. Like, you have to get it right.
That product took us almost 5 years to develop.
Yeah, because it's babies.
So I always tell people this.
Yeah.
We have 50 states in the United States. Each state has its own baby bottle safety laws.
Wow.
And so when we developed this, we had to have a bunch of lawyers going to all the 50 states and doing different types of compliance and work on the BPA and the plastics and the this and the that. There's a little tiny hole in this lid here that we caught at the last minute that relates to a suffocation issue where if the baby rolls over and you can still get air through. I mean, there is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of compliance-related things. And so that was a beast of a product to develop.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I do want to know your go-to market strategy. So when you come up with a product, usually are you going in distributors or do you go direct to consumer? What's your high-level strategy?
Okay, I will start by saying we love Ember.com, okay? When we're selling on our own platform, we get to control the brand and the feel. And so when a consumer comes in to buy an Ember product on Ember.com, it's like, it's like the way we do our images and the way we have the background, the way the experience of how it flows through so easily, and you just Apple Pay or whatever. And so I love sales on Ember.com. With that said, you can't become a multi-billion dollar, the world's next, big brand without, showing up places. And especially in the early days when you're trying to build your brand. This is why we're in every Target store in the country. We're in every Best Buy in the country. Last holiday, we were in every Costco in the country. I call those mini billboards. People discover your product in brick and mortar retail. You're walking down, you're going to get a coffee machine at Target, and you're like, electronic mug, what is this? And you pull it off the shelf, you read about it. Whether or not you buy it right then and there on the spot, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's a discovery.
You were exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm big on kind of having a blend, Manav, of making sure that you can control the audience when you can and control the platform through Ember.com, but also being able to get that reach and having out. So that's where Starbucks and Apple stores and all that stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely see this in Best Buy as well. I don't know if you're in Best Buy.
We love our partnership with Best Buy. We've always done very, very well with them.
Interesting. Yeah, if I was if I was the one inventing this, I would be in Shark Tank. But that's a different time, you know.
Yeah.
But Shark Tank has insane viewership, by the way.
Yes.
Hundreds of millions.
In the early days of Ember, when I was real early, and I was about to launch this, I did consider Shark Tank. Yeah. The valuations that they pay for companies, obviously that wouldn't work for us these days at our scale now. But that was one hang up that I had is, man, I don't think they're going to be able to see the valuation that I would want for the business.
Yeah, I think more than the deal itself, it's like the exposure you get from Shark Tank.
Well said.
I've interviewed another company and they got insane exposure from Shark Tank.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing it through like brick and mortar retailers. We do billboard campaigns. We do social media influencers. In the early days we had a lot of great celebrity investors. Demi Lovato and the Jonas Brothers and this and that. So they helped us as well with our marketing and getting our brand out there.
Amazing. Yeah. And what's the best market after US? Is it I'm assuming Canada, Australia, UK? Is that the right?
Canada's number 2 for us, and then Europe.
Europe?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've always found it interesting to scale a company internationally as well. But that comes with its own challenges.
Yes, I have a great story on that. So when we were launching with Apple, and we went in the early days, and we were pitching. And like I said, it took a very, very long time. We finally got like, hey, it was a call. It was like, we're going to launch your product in Apple stores. Yeah. And we said, okay, great, we're ready. North America, right? And they said, no. We want to launch product in every Apple store in the world. And we said, what? And they said, yeah, that's how you can get part of our marketing dollars and co-op dollars. Like, you may show up in some of our ads. But the only way is if you launch with us worldwide. And we were like, whoa, because we were only set up for the United States at that time.
That's a good problem to have.
This is a great problem to have. And we had a bunch of meetings internally. Are we going to bite this off? Apple's coming to us with a silver platter saying, we will launch you internationally, 27 countries. But like the amount of just absolute, like incredible amount of resources we needed to set up distribution in all those countries, language translations in all those countries, the mobile app in all those countries, the power supply. Think about it. All those countries have different wall plugs. So you have to develop. I mean, there's so much that customer service. How do you do customer service? So we had to put all that together. And you know what we did? We said, you know what? You only live once. We're going to go for it. And it was the most grueling 6 months probably of my life as we prepared for a global launch with Apple. Proud to say, pulled it off. I was in London on the day of the international launch because Apple wanted to launch in all stores on the same day. And it was so cool. And I was in London and I walked in, boom, there's Ember right on the shelf. All the employees were trained on how it works, what it is. I mean, Apple's execution is just fantastic.
I love that.
So that was a big moment in my life as an entrepreneur.
When people ask you, like, what keeps you up at night? Like, you're like,
launching it. I was up on that one.
Launching an Apple store keeps you up at night.
Worldwide. Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Cool. So what was the inception of the idea for Ember LifeSciences?
Yeah. So here we are creating all these really great consumer products, all temperature control related. Yeah. And having a good time, scaling internationally, hiring great leaders. But I thought, how can we use our technology to help save lives or enter the healthcare space? And at the time, the CEO of the Mayo Clinic in Arizona, his name's Wyatt Decker, was on my board of directors. And he would invite us out to the Mayo Clinic. And we would sit there at the Mayo Clinic and with the doctors and scientists. And our idea was to unearth the pain points in healthcare around temperature control. Okay. Lo and behold, it was medicine every time. It was, gosh, Clay, we get these pallets of medicine delivered to our loading docks each day.
Yeah.
And sometimes we open the boxes and the ice packs are kind of squishy and kind of melted. And as doctors, physicians, we get a little nervous about injecting this medicine in our patients. There's no digital tracking in these boxes. It's just cardboard, styrofoam, and ice packs. And they kind of exposed us to this issue. And then they said, we're going on this humanitarian mission to Haiti. This is after the tsunami and everything. And we're having difficulty getting temperature-sensitive insulin and vaccines into these remote villages. Can you help us? So we built a portable, battery-powered medicine cooler, okay? It's actually right up there on the wall. It's that kind of rectangular medicine cooler on the left of the tall one on the top shelf there. And we sent that to Haiti with the Mayo Clinic. And it was a big hit. They were able to move medicine. You could fold out a solar panel and you could connect it. You could use the sun's energy to refrigerate your medicine. It was a big hit. We came back from that trip and we thought, okay, so we have an interesting problem that we can solve here on a humanitarian level, but how do we make the biggest impact? How do we, affect the biggest audience and reach the most amount of people with our technology? And that's when we started to take interviews and meetings with Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, OptumRx, and just kind of leveraging my Rolodex and kind of getting around. Yeah. And Cardinal Health was the first to put their hands up and say, we love, to innovate. We would love to, partner with you on this. They were actually our first investor in Ember LifeSciences. Yeah. And together we built this original technology. They invited us out to one of their largest distribution centers it's actually in Laverne in Tennessee. And we watched 4,000 boxes a day get packed out with cardboard, styrofoam, and ice packs with no temperature trace. This is how the entire industry moves what they call cold chain medicine around. And I was asking a lot of questions because I came from outside of healthcare. It's like, wait, so how do you know, what if it lands on a porch in Arizona and it's 120 degrees? Well, we have algorithms and long story short, as an inventor, I thought, whoa, this is ripe for improvement, right? Yeah. And so I had this idea of creating the world's first self-refrigerated, cloud-based shipping box. And that's what you're looking at here. This is called the Ember Cube. And it actually, we have a few models. The model back there on the right and on the left, the black and the gray one, those ones have refrigerators built in. This is has all the same technology, but uses what you call phase change material ice packs. Yeah. But the idea is that they're cloud connected, right? So we can move medicine from a pharmacy, a distributor, to a patient, a hospital, et cetera. And when the patient receives this shipping box, this literally goes through FedEx or UPS. It just goes right on through.
Just like
this. Yeah. Wow. And there's a zip tie that goes up here. Yeah. And we are the only cellular radio-based shipping box allowed to fly on all FedEx planes in America and all UPS planes in America.
Wow.
Okay? We have GPS, we have temperature tracking, humidity, ambient temperature. It's all going up to our cloud in real time as the box is moving through FedEx or UPS. It's
Can you explain the technology?
Yeah. So when this box gets shipped from a pharmacy, distributor, et cetera, to, let's say, a patient's doorstep, this just lands on your doorstep. It has a screen on the front here. We invented this. Today, most all humans go to a printer and print out the shipping label and stick it on a box. And we thought, why can't we just have a screen on the box? Yeah. But we had to invent this because when we created the world's first self-refrigerated box, we thought, well, how are we going to get it back? Are we just going to put a paper label in there? People are going to have to take it out and tape it to the front. That's not going to work. We probably get 75% of our boxes.
It's going to look ugly.
Well, it's going to look ugly. It's not a sexy, technology. And I was really deeply concerned that we wouldn't get our boxes back, right? Yeah. Because you're relying on the human to do stuff, right? You got to call for a pickup from UPS. You got to stick something on the front. So we said, why don't we make it a screen? Then we said, why not an e-ink screen? So this is the same kind of a screen that's on a Kindle, right? So it looks like paper. So long story short, so this is the screen. It's got the shipping label. When you open the lid to remove your medicine, you can see that it instructs the patient, remove your medicine and close lid. That's it. It's very simple, right?
And how can you get the shipping label in it?
So watch, then you close the lid. Generating return shipping label, and then bam, it just generated the return shipping label.
Who generated that?
Comes from our cloud. And if it is a UPS shipment, we tie into the UPS server, generate it in the cloud, fire it down.
Wow.
If it's FedEx, we tie into FedEx server, grab the shipping label, fire it down.
So how does the flow work in terms of this box is going to be stored at a pharmaceutical facility?
Yep.
They'll ship it.
Yep.
Then they'll put the return shipping label and just send the box back.
Yes. And the beauty is, if you look at our first generation Ember Cube, there's a big button on the top here, right here, which we've taken out, that says return to sender. And so we used to have it so that if you're a patient or a doctor, you would have to open the lid, you take it out, and then you have to do something. You have to push the button and wait for the flip. And we thought, well, why do we need a button on there? We have geofencing. We have the address because it's on the screen.
Yeah.
If we know that we've been delivered, we also get a delivery scan from FedEx and UPS. If we know we're A, delivered, and B, our lid open sensor goes off, why not just automatically flip the label, automatically call for a pickup, and just do all the work right there on the fly? No more button push required.
What kind of medicines this is for? Because just for people who are asking, what kind of medicine and what temperatures they need to be stored at?
Great question. All of the more recent high-tech medicines are cold chain medicines, and they come in a range of temperatures. The bulk of the medicines you may know of, like Humira for arthritis, GLP-1s, which are the new weight loss drugs.
They're massive.
They're just exploding.
Massive.
Those would move in an Ember Cube, for instance. All of those kind of medicines require a 5 Celsius storage temperature.
Interesting.
Or more nerdy, 2 to 8 Celsius. You got to stay in that window, but 5C is kind of where you want to hover. And if you go above or below 8, medicine's spoiled.
Really?
It's spoiled. You're basically injecting water in your body. Right? So keeping the medicine at the right temperature based on the manufacturer's specifications is paramount. And we have created a technology that moves medicine from point A to point B and tracks it with perfect accuracy so that when you receive your medicine, you get a digital certificate which says, hey, Manav, you've just received your medicine and it has stayed the perfect temperature between 2 and 8 Celsius throughout the journey. Doesn't that make you feel kind of
confident,
warm and fuzzy inside? Yeah.
And what's how do you charge it? And is this chargeable?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So it depends on the model. The model back there actually has contacts on the back.
Yeah.
And, if you're familiar with the Ember mug, you just set it on a coaster. We didn't want to have you plug stuff in. It's like that. There's a charging tower, and you literally go up to the tower and you plug it in. You slide the box into the tower, and it starts charging.
Yeah.
With this one, the screen actually charges on its own, and then you pop it back in, and then it can just kind of run in a loop like that.
Wow.
And that's it. That's it.
This seems like a really big idea.
It is a very, very big idea, and it is a global idea. So the United States is the largest pharmaceutical market, but then you think about Japan and you think about Europe and these other markets. And so right now we're making a big splash in the United States. There's some partners we're allowed to talk about publicly, like the USADA, anti-doping. We're literally doing the Boston Marathon this week. We do all kinds of great things like that where we're moving blood samples of the athletes in the Ember Cube. The reason they like the Ember Cube is it tracks it perfectly. And so that way there can't be a claim later on from an athlete that says, oh, but I don't know if you kept my blood at 5 Celsius, and then they just go, yeah, look, it's right here, right? I got the data from Ember. So we're doing all kinds of interesting things with a lot of big companies in the healthcare industry. And now we're working on a global expansion as well.
Interesting. I also saw that you did something with the Paris Olympics.
Oh, yeah. We did so the Ember Cube was used by the USADA for all of the athlete testing for the Olympic trials.
Yeah. That's huge.
It was big deal. Big deal.
Wow.
So all of the blood samples of all of these like world-class athletes were going into a trusted Ember Cube and being transported to their laboratory in Utah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the next big thing? Like, what's the next thing people can expect from you?
So, and a little bit of the answer to that question is in a previous question where you had asked about temperatures of medicines. This, what you're looking at and we're talking about, that's all that 2 to 8 range, and that's a pretty big bulk of medicine. But one of the things we're really excited about is moving into cryogenics, okay? And into cell and gene therapy. These are cancer-curing, therapies that need to be transported at negative 150 Celsius.
Whoa.
Okay? And so we are working on a device that uses liquid nitrogen, which will keep these medicines at less than negative 150 for 10 days at a time.
That's Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Celsius.
Wow.
Yes. Negative 150 Celsius. And so
you can't even touch that. It's you're going to burn your hand.
You can't touch that. You can't touch this. It's like MC Hammer, man. You can play that in the background.
Yeah.
What is the maximum negative temperature of cells?
It's called absolute zero, and I believe it's negative 270. I'd have to look that up. Yeah. It's actually called absolute zero.
So you're working on that product right now?
We are working on that. We are also working on what you call an ultra cold, which will hold medicines at negative 60. And that's where you hear about these vaccines like Moderna and such, where, when they're manufactured and they're moving around in the distribution centers, they have to move at negative 60-ish, negative 60, negative 65. So we're working on a version for that. We're also working on personal medicine coolers. You and I haven't talked about this much, but it's, auto injectors, insulin pens, EpiPens. I have an EpiPen because of a bee allergy, right?
Yeah.
GLP-1s, right? All these, they come in these auto injectors, like a pen with a needle and everything. Today, you have to store it in your refrigerator, next to your lettuce, next to your eggs. People don't like that. We have created an Ember product, which I can't show yet because we're going to launch imminently, which basically is what I call the world's smallest refrigerator. And it's a little tiny little refrigerator, and you put your auto injectors in there, and you can take them on trips with you. It'll keep them cold. So we're quite excited about that as well. So consumer-facing medical products that relate to temperature control, but are not about necessarily shipping medicines.
Wow. Do you plan to take Ember public one day?
I am neutral on that. We believe that, right now we're heads down all about execution. So my whole theory behind like building a business and running a business is, obviously we all have an exit on the horizon, and that's what we get kind of excited about in the future. But if you execute really, really well, and you throw up growth numbers, right? Growth, you're gonna be marching very nicely towards a very big exit. Whether or not it's an IPO or we get acquired, that is to be left to the future, right? But we're obviously very open-minded to either option.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So off camera, we talked about temperature controlled clothing.
Yes.
And that got me really excited because I was like, oh, I'm going to be skiing one day wearing this like really thin windbreaker.
Yes. And keep yourself warm, same time.
Exactly.
So the whole thesis behind Ember is we are not a coffee cup company. I always tell people that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we got our start there. Yes, it was hugely successful. But as you can see from our talk today, we're going into all kinds of areas of temperature control. And when you really sit down and think for a moment, all the areas in your life that could be positively affected by better temperature control, okay? You start to think about apparel. Like, imagine, I got this idea because like I'm friends with a lot of bikers, right? They like get up real early in the morning, 5, 6 in the morning when the sun's coming up, and they get on their bikes and they start pedaling, right? And it is freezing, okay? But then by the time they get an hour or two in the ride, they're sweating like bullets. So you can't go out in a winter jacket and be comfortable so that you can start your ride, because then you got to carry a winter jacket. So that is a perfect example of what if there could be a thin, lightweight apparel technology where it's electronically warming. And you know, we've made amazing prototypes where like the whole upper garment just like warms up. And you feel like you're getting into a jacuzzi when you turn it on. It's crazy.
Wait, did you formulate that product?
No, we have not launched it. These are prototypes.
Okay.
We actually have the patents filed, so it's public knowledge because all of this is actually on file with the USPTO, which is why I can talk about it. But yeah, so we have, I'm just giving you examples like apparel. You know, you can start going into how neat would it be if I'm driving home and I push a button that I want to draw myself a bath, right? So I want to get home and I want my bath to be at exactly 104 degrees so that when I get home into my house, bam, I'm going into the tub and it is at 104 degrees. You follow me?
I think the most common one is the car seat, right?
The car seat.
The warm, I think the most people have experienced that.
Yes.
But unfortunately, a lot of people haven't experienced these other problems that you're talking about. Especially the bath one, because I feel like sometimes it can be too cold or too warm.
Yes. Yes.
It would be cool if you do something in the cold plunge niche, because that cold plunge and sauna has been like the most popular and
blowing up
rising trend that lifts all the boats kind of thing, you know?
2 in 1.
A sauna and a cold plunge in one. That's a heck of a challenge, man. That's a heck of a challenge.
Take my money, you know, it's like, no, but that's interesting because...
well, I mean, but doesn't it make you think like how many different areas there are for temperature control? You had asked me earlier, how do you have 250 patents? There are endless, boundless applications for temperature control. And when I first started, and I started in the lighting industry, all of my patents are around moving and managing thermal energy. That's how I got the LED to be the brightest LED light bulb in the world, because I was able to wick the heat off the back of the LED and radiate it into open air. And so that then led to warming up my eggs, and then like to the cups, and then the baby, right? So really my life is like a thermal journey, isn't it? It's like this journey of like applying thermal science to all these different
I love it. You found your thing.
Yeah, I
like
guess
a lot of people go through their lives, they don't find it. But I feel like you have a lot of good ideas. Maybe you don't want to reveal all of them.
We're not going to do that.
The kids will be walking on the street and saying, "Oh, Mom, look, this is a thermal man."
I can't stop thinking about it now. I think every moment I'm going to be thinking about temperature control.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to be like, how can, even like sitting at the desk while you're working, you can make your seat more warm and fuzzy.
Yes.
You
could have a desk chair be Ember.
We saw this with 8 Sleep.
Yep.
The new
great brand,
new
great
company.
product.
I love that men usually have this problem of getting warm at night.
Too hot.
And women want to get too cold.
Yes.
And I love that you can like,
yes.
Man, I'm glad I interviewed you today, because I now like all the ideas are like going off.
Yep. And wait till you go to sleep tonight and your subconscious mind kicks in and you wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to have more ideas for me.
So people watching, they're like, Clay, you're amazing. You have 250 patents. Like, again, they don't even know how to wrap their heads around that. Well, what's one piece of advice you'll give to people like watching this?
I am a scrappy entrepreneur. Earlier, we talked a little bit about grit and determination and never giving up. To me, that is my number one piece of advice. There was so many times in my entrepreneurial journey where I literally was thinking to myself, there's no way around this brick wall. Mm-hmm. And something in me, you have a nice night of sleep, you wake up, hang on a sec, I may have a way to thread the needle, right? And you just keep going back at the problem until you solve it. And that is what has been successful for me, is just resilience. I consider myself a human punching bag. I get punched down and I bounce right back up. And I get punched down. Sometimes it takes me a couple days to bounce back up, right? But sometimes I can come back, and I'm doing a lot of meditation these days and such, and so my bounce back speed is a lot faster than it used to be. But I would just say resilience and grit, and just really, also, you need to find something that you are wildly passionate about, so that when you are going through the inevitable hard times, you have enough energy in you and drive, because you like this thing that you're doing so much, that you can push through it. Right?
That's how I feel about the podcast. I see myself doing this 30 years from now, just interviewing great people like you.
Yeah.
I mean, like truly the visionaries, the masterminds of our generation, like people who are alive. And like it makes me really happy to be here right now and like talking to people like you. Thank you for doing this, by the way.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm happy to do it, and I really enjoyed our conversation.